The War Council chamber filled with angry voices as Admiral Vex slammed his fist on the holographic table. The blue light from the star map cast shadows across his face as he looked at the grim numbers floating before him. 3 years of fighting. The Kethver Empire had cost the Galactic Alliance more ships and lives than any war in recorded history. "We have lost 60% of our combined fleets," Admiral Vex announced to the gathered representatives. His voice carried the weight of countless battles and too many friends lost to the bio-organic ships of their enemies. The Kethver advance continues on all fronts. At this rate, we have perhaps 6 months before they reach our core worlds. Commander Nix of the Valerian Defense Corps leaned back in her chair and studied the tactical display. Her people had fought alongside the Alliance for 2 centuries, but even their advanced shield technology could not stop the Kethver bioweapons. The enemy ships seemed to absorb energy blasts and heal from physical damage as if they were living creatures rather than vessels of war. "What about the Centauri reinforcements?" asked General Thorne. His weathered face showed the strain of commanding forces across multiple star systems. The Centauri Republic had promised additional ships, but their production facilities had been targeted by Kethver raiders for months. "Destroyed in transit," Admiral Vex replied flatly. The entire convoy was ambushed near the Rigel system, no survivors. A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the reality of their situation became clear. The Alliance had been formed 300 years ago to promote peace and trade between species, but now it faced extinction at the hands of an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. The Kethver had appeared from beyond the galactic rim with technology that defied understanding and a hunger for conquest that knew no limits. Admiral Kane of the human delegation had remained quiet throughout the meeting. Humanity was the newest member of the Alliance, having joined only 50 years ago, when their primitive faster-than-light drives had finally allowed them to reach other star systems. Most species viewed humans as barely capable of interstellar travel, let alone meaningful military contribution. "There is one option we have not discussed," Admiral Kane said as he stood slowly. His uniform bore fewer decorations than the other officers, but his eyes held a determination that made some of the aliens uncomfortable. "The human fleet has developed a new vessel that might change the balance of this war." Commander Nix laughed openly at his words. The sound echoed through the chamber as other representatives began to murmur among themselves. Human technology was considered primitive by galactic standards, and their contributions to the war effort had been limited to supply runs and medical support. The idea that they could have developed something useful seemed absurd. "With respect, Admiral Kane," Commander Nix said with obvious amusement, "human ships have proven unable to even scratch Kethver hulls. What could you possibly have created that our advanced civilizations could not?" "The vessel is called Redemption," Admiral Kane continued despite the mocking laughter. "It uses technology that we believe can neutralize the Kethver bio-organic advantages. Our scientists have been working on this project since the war began." General Thorne shook his head and gestured at the holographic display showing human fleet positions. "Your entire navy consists of converted cargo haulers and scout ships. The largest human vessel in space is barely the size of our support craft. How can you claim to have built something that could affect this war?" "Because sometimes the smallest key opens the largest door," Admiral Kane replied calmly. "We request permission to deploy Redemption against the next major Kethver offensive. 1 ship operating alone behind enemy lines." The laughter that followed his request was even louder than before. Admiral Vex looked at the human representative with something approaching pity. The strain of the war had clearly affected all of them, but the humans seemed to have developed delusions of grandeur that bordered on madness. "Admiral Kane," Admiral Vex said gently, "we appreciate human efforts in this conflict. Your medical ships have saved countless lives, and your supply convoys have kept our forces fed and equipped. But this is not the time for desperate gestures. That will only result in more pointless deaths." "The Kethver bioships regenerate faster than we can damage them," added Commander Nix. "Their weapons convert matter directly to energy, and their hulls seem to adapt to whatever we throw at them." What could one human ship possibly do that our combined fleets cannot? Admiral Kane reached into his briefcase and produced a small data crystal. The device looked ordinary enough, but he handled it as if it contained something precious. This contains our technical specifications and battle plans. I ask only that you review the information before making a final decision. We do not have time for human fantasies, General Thorne declared. Every day we delay gives the Kethver more time to consolidate their positions and build new forces. We need real solutions, not desperate hopes. The argument continued for another hour as various representatives debated strategy and resource allocation. The humans had been included in war planning as a courtesy, but their actual military capabilities were considered negligible. Earth itself was protected mainly by its location far from the main battle zones rather than any defensive strength. As the meeting began to wind down, Admiral Kane made one final plea. If the redemption fails, you lose 1 ship and 12 volunteers. If it succeeds, the entire course of this war could change. The risk is minimal, but the potential reward is enormous. The risk is that we waste time and resources on impossibilities. While our real forces are overwhelmed, Commander Nix replied sharply. Human arrogance has already cost us enough in this war. We cannot afford to indulge your species' delusions of importance. Admiral Vex was about to officially reject the human proposal when the chamber's alarm system activated. Red warning lights bathed the council table as automated systems announced an incoming priority message. The holographic display shifted to show a tactical officer whose face was pale with fear. Admiral Vex, the officer reported breathlessly. Long-range sensors have detected a massive Kethver fleet emerging from hyperspace. The formation includes over 10,000 vessels led by what appears to be their primary command ship. They are heading directly for the Sol system. A stunned silence filled the chamber as the implications became clear. The Kethver had found Earth and were moving to destroy humanity's homeworld. The timing seemed almost deliberate, as if the enemy had been waiting for this moment of weakness and division among the Alliance forces. How long until they reach Earth? Admiral Kane asked quietly. At current speed, approximately 48 hours, came the reply. Our forces in that sector are minimal and cannot hope to stop an attack of this magnitude. Admiral Vex looked around the table at faces filled with shock and growing despair. The war they had been losing slowly was about to end with the complete destruction of an entire species. Even if they could eventually defeat the Kethver, the cost in innocent lives would be staggering. Prepare all available fleets for immediate departure to the Sol system, Admiral Vex ordered. And Admiral Kane, you have permission to deploy your redemption. At this point, we cannot afford to reject any possibility, no matter how remote. As the council members rushed to implement emergency protocols, Admiral Kane remained seated and stared at the data crystal in his hands. The moment he had both hoped for and dreaded had finally arrived. The darkness of space around Earth suddenly filled with the twisted forms of 10,000 Kethver warships as they dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Captain Riley stood on the bridge of the human command vessel, Defiance, and watched through the viewscreen as nightmare became reality. The enemy fleet stretched across the solar system like a plague of metal insects, each ship pulsing with organic life that made them seem more like living creatures than vessels of war. All defense platforms are reporting ready status, announced Lieutenant Brooks from her position at the communications console. Her voice remained steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. Earth's orbital defense grid had been built over decades, but it was designed to handle raiders and pirates, not an invasion force that outnumbered their ships by more than 50-1. The Kethver flagship dominated the center of the formation like a mountain of living metal. The vessel, called Eternal Doom, was 3 times larger than any ship in the human fleet, and its bioorganic hull writhed with patterns that hurt to look at directly. Strange appendages extended from its surface and seemed to taste the vacuum of space as if searching for prey. Sir, we are receiving transmissions from the approaching Alliance fleets, reported Ensign Garcia. Admiral Vex estimates arrival in 18 hours but warns that their combined forces will still be outnumbered 8-1. Captain Riley nodded grimly as he studied the tactical display. 18 hours might as well have been 18 years given the firepower arrayed against them. The first wave of Earth's defense fleet was already moving to intercept, but their small cruisers and frigates looked like toys compared to the massive bioships of the Kethver on the enemy flagship. Overlord Drex examined the human defenses with cold satisfaction. His species had conquered 17 star systems during their war against the Alliance, but Earth would be the most satisfying victory. Humanity had proven surprisingly stubborn during the conflict, providing medical aid and supplies that had prolonged Alliance resistance far beyond what should have been possible. "Sub-Commander Krex," Overlord Drex called to his tactical officer, "what is your assessment of human military capability?" The younger Kethver studied his bioorganic sensors before responding. Their largest ships measure approximately 600 meters in length with primitive energy weapons and physical armor. Our smallest raiders are more heavily armed than their most powerful vessels. This will not be a battle but an extermination. Overlord Drex allowed himself a moment of anticipation. The bioweapons of his people fed on the life force of their enemies, growing stronger with each victory. After consuming the billions of humans on Earth, his fleet would be powerful enough to assault the Alliance core worlds and end this war within months. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "I want the human homeworld reduced to rubble within 6 hours. Leave no survivors to carry word of their defeat." The first engagement began as Earth's outer defense platforms opened fire with everything they had. Streams of plasma and particle beams lanced across space to strike the approaching Kethver vessels, but the enemy ships absorbed the energy like sponges soaking up water. Where human weapons should have burned through hull plating, they instead seemed to feed the organic growth that covered each bio-ship. Captain Riley watched in horror as the lead elements of Earth's fleet closed with the enemy only to be torn apart by weapons that converted matter directly into energy. The human ship Courage exploded in a ball of white fire as biotendrils from a Kethver raider reached out and drained its fusion reactor. The destroyer Hope lasted 30 seconds longer before its hull was consumed by some kind of acidic spray that turned metal into vapor. "Fall back to the secondary defense line," Captain Riley ordered. "All ships maintain maximum distance and use hit-and-run tactics. Do not let them get close enough to use their bioweapons." Meanwhile, far below on Luna's surface, Dr. Helena Ward supervised the final preparations of the most secret project in human history. The facility had been built deep inside an ancient crater and hidden from all sensors by layers of deception that had taken decades to perfect. Even most government officials did not know of its existence. "Final systems check complete," reported her assistant Dr. Marcus Chun as he monitored the readouts from the ship's core. "All ancient technology is showing optimal resonance patterns. The vessel is ready for deployment." Dr. Ward looked through the observation window at the ship they had named Redemption. From the outside, it appeared to be nothing more than a standard human cruiser with sleek lines and modest weapons. But hidden within its hull was technology that predated the current galactic civilization by millions of years. Technology that humanity had discovered in the deepest ocean trenches of Earth and spent 50 years learning to understand. "Have you been able to contact Captain Stone?" Dr. Ward asked. "Yes, ma'am. He and his crew are standing by in the briefing chamber. All 12 volunteers understand that this is likely a one-way mission." Dr. Ward nodded slowly. "Captain Marcus Stone had been chosen to command Redemption not because he was the best pilot in the human fleet, but because he possessed the rare mental discipline required to interface with ancient technology. The artifacts they had found responded only to minds that could accept impossibility without question. "Send them to the ship," she ordered, "and activate the jamming protocols. I do not want the Kethver to detect Redemption until it is too late to stop what must happen." As the small crew made their way to the hidden vessel, the battle in space continued to go badly for the human defenders. Admiral Vex had arrived with what Alliance ships he could gather, but even their advanced technology proved inadequate against bioorganic hulls that healed faster than they could be damaged. "Sir, the enemy is broadcasting on all frequencies," reported the communications officer aboard Admiral Vex's flagship. "They are demanding complete surrender within 6 hours, or they will begin targeting civilian population centers." Admiral Vex studied the tactical display and realized that conventional tactics would never succeed against an enemy like this. The Kethver ships were not just vessels, but living organisms that grew stronger with each victory. Unless something changed dramatically, Earth would fall and humanity would join the long list of species that had been consumed by the bioorganic nightmare. "Where are those human reinforcements they promised?" demanded Commander Nix over the com channel. Her ships had taken heavy damage trying to protect Earth's orbital platforms. If they have some secret weapon, now would be an excellent time to deploy it. Before Admiral Vex could respond, his sensors detected a new contact rising from Luna's surface. The ship appeared to be a standard human cruiser, but something about its energy signature seemed unusual. As he watched, the vessel accelerated toward the battle zone with determination that bordered on madness. "Unknown human vessel, this is Admiral Vex," he transmitted. "Identify yourself and your intentions. The battle zone is extremely dangerous for a single ship." Captain Stone heard the transmission but did not respond as Dr. Ward had instructed. The Redemption's AI-designated area was already plotting a course toward the center of the Kethver formation, where their flagship waited like a poisonous spider in its web. In approximately 30 minutes, they would reach the optimal position for what had to happen next. "Sir, the human ship is not responding to our hails," reported the tactical officer. "It appears to be heading directly toward the enemy fleet on what can only be described as a suicide run." Overlord Drex noticed the approaching vessel and felt a moment of amusement at human desperation. "Sub-Commander Krex, destroy that ship as an example to the others. Show them the futility of resistance." "Yes, Overlord," Krex replied as he targeted the bioweapons. "The vessel will be consumed within moments." But as the Kethver weapons fired, something impossible happened. The energy beams and biotendrils passed through the human ship as if it were not there. The Redemption continued its steady approach toward the heart of the enemy formation, apparently immune to every weapon directed against it. "What kind of technology allows them to phase through our attacks?" Krex asked in confusion. Overlord Drex stared at the small human vessel with growing unease. In 3 years of war, nothing had proven immune to Kethver bioweapons. Whatever the humans had developed, it was unlike anything his people had encountered before. As the ship drew closer, he began to suspect that perhaps he had underestimated humanity's capabilities. The space around Earth's moon grew thick with weapons fire as the Kethver fleet concentrated everything they had on the lone human vessel that refused to die. Overlord Drex watched from his command throne as biotendrils that could drain the life from entire cities passed harmlessly through the ship called Redemption. Energy beams that had melted Alliance dreadnoughts struck empty space where the vessel should have been destroyed. "All weapons are reporting the same result, Overlord," Sub-Commander Krex announced with barely controlled panic in his voice. "The human ship exists, but our attacks cannot touch it. The vessel appears to be shifting between dimensions or using some form of phase technology we do not understand." Overlord Drex leaned forward and studied the tactical display more carefully. In 3 years of conquest, his bioorganic fleet had never encountered anything that could resist their weapons. The Kethver had evolved beyond the need for traditional technology, and their living ships drew power from the life force of their enemies. But this human vessel seemed to exist outside the normal rules of space and time. "How close is it to our position?" he demanded. "The ship will reach the center of our formation in approximately 7 minutes, Overlord. At current speed, it will pass directly beneath our flagship." The massive bioorganic hull of Eternal Doom shuddered as Overlord Drex considered his options. Retreat was unthinkable for a Kethver commander, but this situation was unlike anything his people had prepared for. The human ship was small and appeared harmless, but its immunity to their weapons suggested technology far beyond what humanity should possess aboard the Redemption. Captain Marcus Stone felt the weight of destiny pressing down on him like a physical force. The ship's bridge was smaller than most human vessels, with only 12 crew stations arranged around a central column that pulsed with ancient energy patterns. The technology they carried had been discovered in Earth's deepest ocean trenches, where it had waited for millions of years. "Arya, what is our current distance to target?" Captain Stone asked the ship's artificial intelligence. 6 minutes and 47 seconds to optimal position, Captain. The AI replied in a voice that seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere at once. Ancient protocols are responding normally and dimensional phase generators are maintaining stability. We remain undetectable to standard sensors while shifted between dimensional layers. Dr. Helena Ward's voice crackled over the communication system from her hidden facility on Luna. "Captain Stone, you need to understand what will happen when you activate the primary systems." The ancient technology was designed as a weapon of last resort against threats that could not be stopped by conventional means. Once triggered, there will be no way to reverse the process. Captain Stone looked around at his crew and saw the same determination in their faces that he felt in his heart. They had all volunteered for this mission knowing it would likely be their last. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez at the weapons console gave him a small nod. Engineer Robert Kim reported all systems ready. Navigator Lisa Park confirmed their course remained true toward the Kethver flagship. "We understand the price, Dr. Ward," Captain Stone replied calmly. "Humanity has always been willing to sacrifice for the greater good. Today will be no different." The Alliance forces watching from their battle positions could hardly believe what they were seeing. Admiral Vex had commanded fleets for 30 years, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for a ship that could simply ignore enemy weapons. The human vessel continued its steady approach toward the heart of the Kethver formation as if the most powerful bioorganic fleet in the galaxy was nothing more than empty space. "Sir, our sensors are detecting unusual energy readings from the human ship," reported his science officer. "The patterns do not match any known technology in our databases. Whatever they are using, it appears to be far more advanced than anything we have developed." Commander Nix listened to the reports from her own damaged vessel and felt a growing sense of unease. She had mocked human capabilities during the War Council, but clearly there were aspects of their technology that the Alliance did not understand. The fact that a single human ship was penetrating the strongest enemy formation without taking damage suggested possibilities that challenged everything she thought she knew. "This changes everything," she transmitted to Admiral Vex. "If humanity has developed weapons that can defeat the Kethver, we need to completely reassess their role in the Alliance. Perhaps we have been underestimating them from the beginning." General Thorne watched the tactical display from his command ship and wondered what other secrets humanity might be hiding. Their rapid advancement from primitive space travel to immunity against bioorganic weapons suggested access to technology that predated current galactic civilization. The implications were staggering if humans had somehow discovered ancient artifacts. On Luna, Dr. Ward monitored the Redemption's progress through instruments that barely registered its existence. The ship was now operating in a state between dimensions, where normal matter could not affect it. But this protection came at a terrible cost as the ancient technology consumed the life force of everything around it. The crew would not survive much longer in contact with such power. "Dimensional shift will begin automatically when we reach the target zone," Captain Stone announced to his crew. "Remember that we are not just fighting for Earth, but for every species threatened by the Kethver invasion. Our sacrifice will give the galaxy a chance to rebuild in peace." The Redemption passed through the outer layers of the Kethver formation like a ghost moving through solid walls. Bioorganic ships that could have crushed human dreadnoughts found their weapons useless against technology that existed partially outside normal space. Overlord Drex felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest: genuine fear. "All ships concentrate fire on that vessel," he ordered desperately. "Use every weapon we possess and target the space around it if direct hits are impossible. Something must be able to stop this attack." The sky around Earth filled with energy as 10,000 Kethver ships opened fire simultaneously. Biotendrils thick as buildings reached across space while energy beams that could melt asteroids converged on the tiny human vessel. But the Redemption continued forward as if sailing through calm water instead of the most intense bombardment in galactic history. 4 minutes to target position, Arya announced. All crew should prepare for dimensional transition. Ancient protocols will engage automatically upon reaching optimal distance from enemy flagship. Captain Stone felt the ship beginning to change around him as systems that had slept for millions of years awakened to their purpose. The hull started to vibrate with frequencies that human senses could barely detect, while the central column pulsed faster with each passing second. Whatever the ancients had built, it was preparing to reveal its true nature. "Sir, I am detecting massive energy buildup from within our own hull," reported Engineer Kim with growing alarm. "Power levels are approaching critical thresholds for every system we understand. The ancient technology is drawing energy from sources I cannot identify." The Redemption reached the exact center of the Kethver formation and suddenly stopped as if an invisible hand had grasped it from space itself. For a moment that stretched into eternity, nothing happened as two radically different technologies faced each other across the void. Then, without warning, the modest human ship began to transform. The hull that had appeared so ordinary started to shimmer and expand as hidden layers folded outward like the petals of some impossible flower. What had seemed like a simple cruiser revealed itself to be something far more complex as ancient technology emerged from dimensional storage where it had been waiting. The Kethver fleet found itself surrounding not a small human vessel but a weapon designed by beings who had ruled the galaxy. When their ancestors were still crawling in primordial seas, Overlord Drex stared in growing horror as his sensors tried to process readings that defied every law of physics his people understood. The energy signatures coming from the transformed ship registered as infinite on some scales, while barely existing on others. Whatever humanity had unleashed, it was about to change everything. The transformation of the Redemption sent ripples through space itself as ancient technology that had waited millions of years finally revealed its true purpose. What had appeared to be a simple human cruiser unfolded like a mechanical flower, blooming in the vacuum of space. Layer after layer of impossible geometry emerged from dimensional storage where the ancients had hidden their most powerful creation. Captain Marcus Stone felt his consciousness expanding as the ship's systems merged with his mind through interfaces that bypassed normal human limitations. The ancient technology required a living pilot to guide its function, and his crew had been chosen specifically for their ability to survive contact with forces that could drive most beings insane. Around him, the bridge transformed into something that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human senses could process. "Sir, the energy readings are beyond anything our instruments can measure," reported Engineer Kim through gritted teeth as waves of power washed over them. "The ship is drawing energy from the quantum foam itself and converting virtual particles into real matter. This technology is manipulating the fundamental forces that hold reality together." Dr. Helena Ward monitored the transformation from her hidden facility on Luna and felt tears streaming down her face. 50 years of research had led to this moment when humanity would either save the galaxy or destroy themselves in the attempt. The ancient artifacts had been found in Earth's deepest ocean trenches where they had waited since before multicellular life evolved on any known world. "The field effect is beginning to propagate," she announced to the skeleton crew that remained with her. "In 30 seconds, every Kethver ship within 50,000 kilometers will begin to experience dimensional phase shift. Their bioorganic technology will not be able to adapt to what comes next." Overlord Drex watched his flagship's instruments go insane as readings spiked beyond maximum levels before dropping to zero and then climbing again. The space around his fleet was becoming unstable as reality itself bent under the influence of whatever the humans had unleashed. His bioorganic ships that had seemed invincible moments before now registered as vulnerable to forces they had never been designed to resist. Sub-Commander Krex, order all ships to retreat immediately, he commanded with rising panic in his voice. Get us away from whatever that thing is before it fully activates. I cannot, sir, Krex replied with horror evident in his tone. The ship is generating some kind of stasis field that prevents dimensional transitions. Our biodrives are not responding and conventional engines cannot achieve escape velocity. We are trapped within the effect radius. The truth of their situation became clear as Overlord Drex realized that the humans had not built a weapon to destroy his fleet but a cage to contain it. The ancient technology was designed to create a localized region of space where the normal rules no longer applied. Within this field, his bioorganic ships would find themselves subject to forces that their living hulls could not comprehend or resist. Aboard the Redemption, Captain Stone felt his awareness expanding beyond the boundaries of his physical form as the ancient systems fully integrated with his consciousness. He could perceive every Kethver ship within the growing field effect and understand exactly how their biotechnology functioned. The enemy vessels were indeed living organisms, but they operated according to principles that the ancients had long ago learned to control. Area, begin final sequence activation, he ordered through thoughts rather than words. Set field parameters to maximum radius and prepare for entropy cascade initiation. Understood, Captain, the AI replied with what almost sounded like sadness. Final sequence will commence in 15 seconds. All crew should prepare for dimensional translation. The process cannot be reversed once begun. The space around the transformed Redemption began to ripple like water as fundamental forces that normally operated at the quantum level suddenly became visible to normal sensors. The vacuum itself took on a crystalline quality as virtual particles were forced into stable configurations that had not existed since the universe was young. Reality was being rewritten according to patterns established by beings whose understanding of physics made current galactic science seem like primitive cave paintings. Admiral Vex watched from his command ship as readings that should have been impossible appeared on his instruments. The human vessel had become something that existed partially outside normal spacetime while simultaneously affecting everything around it. The energy it was generating could have powered his entire fleet for centuries, but it was being used for a purpose that defied understanding. Sir, our science division reports that local space is undergoing fundamental restructuring, his tactical officer announced with amazement. The laws of physics within a 50,000-kilometer radius are being altered at the subatomic level. The Kethver bioships are beginning to show signs of systemic failure as their organic components encounter conditions they were never evolved to handle. Commander Nix felt her previous mockery of human capabilities turning to ash in her mouth as she witnessed technology that surpassed anything the Alliance had ever developed. The implications were staggering as it became clear that humanity had access to knowledge from the galaxy's distant past. Her people had always assumed they were among the most advanced species in known space, but apparently they were children playing with toys compared to what the ancients had achieved. All ships maintain maximum distance from the effect zone. She ordered her remaining vessels. We do not know how far the field will extend or what it might do to our own technology. The Kethver fleet found itself frozen in space as their bioorganic drives failed to function within the expanding field of altered physics. Ships that had been alive with predatory hunger moments before now drifted helplessly as their living hulls encountered forces that had no equivalent in natural evolution. The bioweapons that had made them so dangerous began to shut down as the very concept of life and death took on new meanings within the ancient field. Overlord, our biomatrix is beginning to crystallize, Sub-Commander Krex reported with growing terror. The organic components of our ships are being converted to some form of stable matter that no longer responds to neural commands. We are becoming inert. Overlord Drex felt his own bio-enhancements beginning to malfunction as the field effect reached his flagship. The symbiotic organisms that enhanced his strength and extended his lifespan were going dormant as they encountered an environment where biological processes operated according to unfamiliar rules. Around him, the living bridge of eternal doom was slowly becoming something that resembled carved stone more than living tissue. Dr. Ward watched the readings from Luna and knew that the moment of decision had arrived. The ancient technology was performing exactly as their research had predicted, but the cost was becoming clear. Captain Stone and his crew were being consumed by forces that no human mind was designed to contain. Their sacrifice would save billions of lives, but at a price that would haunt her for the rest of her days. "The entropy cascade is reaching critical mass," she announced to her team. "In 60 seconds, every bioorganic system within the field will undergo complete phase transition from living matter to crystallized stasis. The Kethver fleet will be preserved but no longer capable of biological function." The Redemption reached the peak of its transformation as ancient systems that had been built to reshape reality itself came fully online. Captain Stone felt his consciousness expanding to encompass the entire field effect as he became one with technology that predated human civilization by millions of years. Through the ship's senses, he could perceive every molecule within the growing zone of altered space as the fundamental forces of the universe bent to his will. "Goodbye, Earth," he whispered through thoughts that now existed partially outside normal time. "Remember us not as warriors but as gardeners who planted seeds of peace in a galaxy grown dark with war." The field effect reached its maximum expansion, and suddenly everything within 50,000 kilometers of the Redemption became subject to laws of physics that belonged to an earlier epoch of universal history. Bioorganic matter found itself unable to maintain the complex chemical processes that defined life as entropy itself was forced into new patterns established by ancient science. In the space of 6 minutes, 10,000 Kethver warships simply stopped being alive. The silence that followed was more profound than anything Admiral Vex had experienced in 30 years of commanding starfleets. Where moments before the space around Earth had been filled with the chaotic energy of the largest battle in galactic history, now there was only crystalline stillness. 10,000 Kethver bioships hung motionless in the void, like sculptures carved from some impossible mineral that caught starlight and held it frozen in patterns too beautiful and terrible to comprehend. "Sir, I am reading 0 biosignatures from the entire enemy fleet," reported his science officer with wonder evident in his voice. "The organic components of their ships have undergone complete molecular restructuring. They appear to have been converted into some form of stable crystalline matrix that maintains their original shape but no longer supports biological processes." Admiral Vex studied the tactical display and tried to process what he was seeing. Each Kethver vessel remained exactly where it had been when the field effect reached maximum expansion, but they were no longer alive in any sense that his instruments could detect. The bioweapons that had made them so dangerous were now nothing more than decorative sculptures frozen in configurations that would never change again. "Commander," Nix transmitted from her damaged cruiser with amazement that bordered on religious. The human ship. What happened to the human ship?" Where the Redemption had undergone its transformation, there now existed a sphere of space that seemed to contain all the colors that had ever existed, while simultaneously appearing completely transparent. The ancient technology had consumed itself in the process of creating the field effect, leaving behind only a monument to forces that the current galaxy could barely understand. Dr. Helena Ward sat in her command chair on Luna and wept for Captain Marcus Stone and his crew as their final telemetry confirmed what she had known would happen. The ancient technology required a living catalyst to function, but the process consumed whatever consciousness guided it. 12 brave souls had given their lives to save not just Earth but every species threatened by the Kethver expansion across the galaxy. "The field effect is stabilizing," she announced to her team through tears. "All bioorganic matter within the target zone has been successfully converted to crystalline stasis. The Kethver fleet is permanently neutralized, but Captain Stone and his crew are gone. They became part of the ancient system in the final moments and cannot be recovered." General Thorne watched from his command ship as the implications of what had just occurred began to sink in. The war that had consumed the galaxy for 3 years and cost billions of lives had ended in 6 minutes. Because humanity possessed technology that predated known civilization. The questions this raised about human origins and capabilities would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. All ships report to the crystallized fleet perimeter, he ordered his remaining vessels. I want detailed scans of every enemy ship to confirm they pose no further threat, and someone find out exactly how humanity acquired technology that makes our most advanced systems look like stone tools. Overlord Drax found himself trapped within his own crystallized body aboard the frozen flagship Eternal Doom. His consciousness remained intact, but his bio-enhanced form could no longer respond to neural commands. Around him, the living bridge had become a work of art that preserved every detail in mineral perfection while eliminating any possibility of biological function. He could think and observe, but could not speak or move or command his fleet. The other Kethver throughout the crystallized ships experienced the same fate as their overlord. Their minds remained active within bodies that had been converted to stable matter configurations that would endure for millennia without change. They had become living statues aware of their condition but powerless to alter it. The bio-organic empire that had threatened to consume the galaxy was now a memorial to the price of underestimating humanity. Sub-Commander Krex tried desperately to send signals to ships beyond the field effect, but his bio-neural interfaces had become decorative patterns within his crystallized skull. He could see his instruments and understand their readings, but could not manipulate any controls. The Kethver fleet had been preserved in perfect detail, but rendered completely harmless by technology that operated according to principles their science had never encountered. Admiral Kane arrived with the remainder of the human fleet and stood on his bridge staring at the aftermath of what his species had accomplished. The cost had been terrible, but the sacrifice of the Redemption's crew had saved not just Earth but potentially every world in the galaxy. The ancient technology had performed exactly as their research predicted, but seeing the results firsthand was both triumphant and heartbreaking. "Sir, we are receiving communications from Alliance Command," reported his communications officer. "Admiral Vex is requesting immediate consultation regarding the technology we deployed. The Galactic Council wants a full briefing on our capabilities." Admiral Kane nodded slowly as he considered how to explain 50 years of secret research into artifacts that had been hidden in Earth's oceans for millions of years. Humanity had always known this day would come when their guardianship of ancient technology would be revealed. The question now was whether the galaxy would accept humans as protectors of knowledge too dangerous for most species to handle. Dr. Ward received clearance to emerge from her hidden facility and address the Alliance fleet directly. The time for secrecy had passed, and the galaxy deserved to understand what had just saved them from conquest. She opened communications channels to every ship in the system and prepared to reveal truths that would change everything. "This is Dr. Helena Ward of the Terran Research Division," she announced. "What you have witnessed today was the deployment of technology discovered by human deep ocean exploration teams 50 years ago. The artifacts we found predate current galactic civilization by approximately 6 million years and represent the work of beings we call the Ancients." The silence that followed her announcement was profound as the implications sank in across dozens of different species and cultures. Humanity had not only developed the means to end the war, but had been secretly studying technology that made every current achievement seem primitive by comparison. The Ancients appear to have been a peaceful species that developed science beyond our current understanding, Dr. Ward continued. They left these artifacts as safeguards against threats that conventional technology could not handle. We have spent decades learning to safely interface with their systems, and today represents our first operational deployment. Admiral Vex found his voice first among the Alliance commanders. "Dr. Ward, are you saying that humanity has access to additional ancient technology beyond what we witnessed today?" "Yes, Admiral," she replied calmly. "Earth serves as a repository for approximately 47 different ancient devices of varying function and capability. We have been studying them since first contact with the galactic community and consider ourselves guardians of knowledge too dangerous to be widely distributed." Commander Nix felt her worldview shifting as she realized that humanity had been far more advanced than anyone suspected. Their apparent primitiveness had been a careful deception designed to hide capabilities that could reshape the balance of power throughout known space. The species she had mocked during the War Council possessed weapons that could end civilizations or preserve them depending on human intentions. The crystallized Kethver fleet became a tourist destination within months as beings from across the galaxy came to witness the aftermath of ancient technology. The perfectly preserved bioship served as a reminder that some threats required responses beyond conventional warfare. Scientists studied the crystalline structures for years, but never found a way to reverse the process or communicate with the conscious minds trapped within. 5 years after the Battle of Earth, humanity had become the most respected and feared member of the Galactic Alliance. Other species approached them with a mixture of gratitude and caution, knowing that humans possessed the means to either protect the galaxy or dominate it completely. The balance of power had shifted, but humanity used their influence to promote peace and cooperation rather than conquest. Dr. Ward established the Ancient Technology Council to oversee research into the remaining artifacts while ensuring that dangerous discoveries remained under human control. The galaxy had been saved, but the responsibility of guardianship weighed heavily on a species that had only recently achieved interstellar travel. The memorial to Captain Marcus Stone and his crew became a shrine visited by beings from every corner of known space. Their sacrifice had proven that sometimes the smallest actions could have the greatest consequences, and that courage in the face of impossible odds could change the fate of entire civilizations. And in the deepest vaults beneath Earth's surface, other ancient artifacts waited patiently for the day when humanity might need them again.